Welcome back to our other big story today. As India aims now for a coronavirus indigenous vaccine, the ICMR, the Indian Council for Medical Research, has stirred a massive controversy by setting an August 15 deadline for the vaccine, which it claims it's doing in partnership with the Hyderabad-based company Bharat Biotech. Experts are questioning the ICMR's efforts to expedite the vaccine, calling the deadline and the manner in which letters are being sent out completely unrealistic. Let's take a look at this report from Milan Sharma.
India is aiming for a coronavirus vaccine by Independence Day. A letter written by ICMR Director General Dr. Balram Bhargav asking participating hospitals to speed up human trials for Bharat Biotech's indigenous vaccine has stirred a massive controversy. Dr. Bhargav's letter states it is envisaged to launch the vaccine for public health use latest by 15th August 2020 after completion of the trial. For this, it is advised to fast-track all approvals needed to ensure subject enrollment is initiated no later than 7 July 2020. The letter ends with a warning. Non-compliance will be taken very seriously. Sources in the ICMR have confirmed the letter is authentic. Experts are now raising questions over ICMR's efforts to expedite the vaccine.
Also slightly divergent from the clinical trial history of India for this particular clinical trial, which mentions that subject recruitment will only start on 13th of July.
The Clinical Trial Registry of India documents reveal the trial was registered on 1st July 2020 for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Bharat Biotech plans to test 1,125 people in these trials and plans to enroll people on 13 July. According to the registry, Bharat Biotech could take 1 year and 3 months for trials. Of this, Phase 1 trials alone will take at least a month.
Hopefully this trial will go on war footing level and there will be no side effects, hopefully, and people will come forward. And this will be a very good step, and in doing so, we are at par with the race of Moderna and King's College vaccine, that is Oxford vaccine. This is a very, very stimulating and good news.
In emergency situations like a pandemic, clinical trials can be accelerated. In such a case, Phase 1 trial, which is for safety studies, is conducted on 50 to 500 people. It takes up to 4 months. Phase 2 is for dosage of the vaccine. It's conducted on 500 to 1,000 people and takes another 4 months. But in the case of Covaxin, these two phases will happen together to save time. Bharat Biotech itself, in a recent interview to India Today, had looked at a year-end delivery of the vaccine.
We are all working sincerely, I'm telling you, as a commercial company, not to make a story out of it, but the virus, to multiply, it takes 15 days. So it doesn't happen just like that. So every test, it takes a minimum 2 to 3 weeks for us for the results to come.
Experts have questioned the fast tracking of human trials because they say, does it signify and assure the safety and efficacy of a vaccine that will finally be given to millions to fight the coronavirus? With Pradeep Gupta, this is Milan Sharma for India Today.
So is there pressure on ICMR, on Bharat Biotech to fast track the vaccine, particularly keeping in mind an August 15 deadline so that the Prime Minister could maybe make an announcement at Independence Day? Is this the way medical science works? We're joined by Anand Bhan, researcher in global health, bioethics and health policy. He joined me from Mangaluru. Professor Ramanan Lakshminarayan, Director, Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy, is also with us. Thank you both very much for joining us. Before I come to you, I want to play what Dr. David Nabarro, the WHO envoy on COVID-19, told me just yesterday when I asked him about vaccines and how long it would take for a vaccine. Listen in.
And how long is it going to take the world to ensure that everybody who wants can be immunized? I think it'll be a bit of time. So I like to say, let's consider when the world is likely to have a safe and effective vaccine or vaccines that can be made available for all 7.8 billion inhabitants. I think it's 2.5 years, honestly. And that's why I'm asking everybody to plan for living with the virus and getting on top of it for 2.5 years minimum. And if it turns out to be quicker, then I shall be the first person to jump for joy.
Here is the world's leading, one of the world's leading public health authorities saying 2.5 years. The government of India or the ICMR seems to be setting an August 15 deadline. The vaccine by August 15. Science or fiction? Is the ICMR acting under pressure? Do vaccines work to a deadline? These are some of the questions I want to raise. Why don't you go, Professor Ramanan Lakshminarayanan, first? Because you, in the morning when you heard this news, seemed to suggest to me that it was a terrible, terrible way of actually trying to find a vaccine. Why do you say that?
So, Rajdeep, there are 4 aspects to this. One is, of course, the urgency of the vaccine. No one can dispute that. And India, in some ways, may have to develop its own vaccine, because even if someone else develops a vaccine, we may be last in line. And therefore, it makes sense to have an indigenous vaccine. The second is this particular vaccine candidate. It's actually not a bad candidate. And in fact, all the companies, Krishna Allah and Bharat Biotech, actually have experience with developing an indigenous vaccine. Mm-hmm. They did that with the rotavirus vaccine, but that took, probably 15 years in their process. It took about 30 plus years, right from when the strain was found to when we had a vaccine. So that's the typical timeline of vaccine development. So not like the vaccine candidate is bad. The third thing is really around process. What was disturbing about this was that somehow we thought that you can actually be sure that you have a vaccine in 45 days from now. Vaccines don't operate on our timelines. It really is a function of science. Most vaccines fail, and that is just the truth of the matter. If you line up all the vaccines that have ever been developed, most vaccines, over 90% of vaccines will fail. Probably more than 98% of vaccines will fail, which is why David Nabarro is right. It's not because of lack of effort or lack of money or lack of intent. It is just that vaccine development is a very hard business. And therefore, you cannot determine an endpoint to say that I will have a vaccine by this particular point in time. It's really going to be a function of how long it takes. And the last point is really around safety. Now, most vaccines, like childhood vaccines, we give these only to 26 million children, 2.6 crores every year. So it's like a small number. This particular vaccine, again, like David said, has to be given to the entire population. So the vaccine has to be safe for children, it has to be safe for adults, it has to be safe for the elderly. So the bar for this vaccine is much higher than even a regular vaccine, which is just for children, where you're testing it only on one age group. So for all of these reasons, these all add to the time that it takes to develop a vaccine, which is why I would agree it will take, at least 2 years, and probably a year and a half to 2 years. And then there's a question of scaling up production. And I think we should calibrate our expectations to that timeline.
Let me ask you, Anand Bhan, what is it about this ICMR letter that troubles you? Is it the threatening tone in it, the manner in which it says you have to start the trials by a particular date, by almost eliminating the various stages that are required, that it sets this deadline? Or what is it about this that troubles you so much? The fact that results are assumed to be a success?
Thank you. So I think there are a few elements in the ICMR letter which is a bit surprising. One is that there is an assumption that they will be able to finish phase 1, phase 2 studies as well as efficacy studies by the 15th August and have results to announce on the 15th of August, which is highly unlikely and also is a time frame which looks very, very ambitious and unlike anything we've seen for vaccine research or indeed for clinical trials earlier. The second element is that given that this is a research on vaccines, a novel vaccine candidate for a novel disease, which is COVID-19, you would want to ensure that due processes and standards are followed in terms of your protocol, in terms of ensuring safety and efficacy is given enough attention. And the time frame that is being lined up makes it extremely difficult to do it. This is a study which seems to be planned to be done nationally across many sites, and it does require time for both the institution as well as their own committees like the ethics committee of that institution to look at the protocol, to look at the data closely, for us to do an analysis at the end of each phase before deciding if we want to proceed to other phases. And all of that typically does take a fair amount of time. So to expect all of that to be done and be ready for the results to be shared in the public domain in just over a month is highly surprising. So I think that's where it does raise a bit of red flags, and it's unclear why such a letter has been issued and why such aggressive timeline has been chosen, and what protections are in place to prevent the possibility of any risk happening.
Are you therefore suggesting it's impossible to conduct these proper clinical trials and get a result by August 15, or improper? Let's be clear. Is it about impossibility or impropriety?
Well, it is very, very difficult, and especially so for vaccine research in an area where it's a new novel virus, and also a vaccine candidate which has not been used before, presumably. Either of it makes it difficult. Because to do proper research in a scientific manner to get results which are meaningful and which can be used to make policy decisions, for example, about whether the vaccine is a fit vaccine to be introduced nationally for public health prevention purposes, requires you to do good quality research, and such research does take time. So yes, you can expedite some of those processes and you can probably make some of those shorter, but you cannot skip some of the key elements, and those elements require to be done and require time, adequate time to be given, so that you're confident about the data that you're seeing. You're also confident about the process that you followed, and so whichever vaccine then you come up with, you have at least some level of confidence that this is a safe vaccine, it is an efficacious vaccine, it's a quality vaccine.
Let me ask you, Professor Lakshminarayan, in conclusion, the elephant in the room, is there political pressure? There's a sense that we are putting the ICMR, our scientists, indeed Bharat Biotech, under extreme pressure to meet this August 15 deadline now that this letter has been leaked out. And how will the world look at it? Here is the world which is saying it's going to take a year, 2 years, and here is India saying we'll do it in 6 weeks.
So Rajdeep, all that I can say is I don't know what the motivation was for that letter. I can hope that maybe there was a typo and they made 2021 August 15th rather than 2020. That's a possible explanation. But let me just actually point out what the pitfalls are of being aggressive on a timeline and not being careful about safety. Mm-hmm. If we roll out of a vaccine which causes some sort of harm, even 1 in 1,000 people who get the vaccine, we would have effectively undone all of the benefit of the vaccine in terms of preventing or reducing the severe impacts of COVID. That would be a terrible thing to do, because it will not just harm public confidence in the COVID vaccine, it will harm public confidence in science, it will harm public confidence across all vaccines. Even today, we have people who encourage vaccine hesitancy, as in people to say vaccines don't work. We struggle against that when we try to give out vaccines, because there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, but vaccines are made by companies that are out to make a profit, and we really shouldn't be giving them out to everyone. So we're fighting against that. Now, having a vaccine that doesn't work properly, which is not safe, not efficacious, will put a lot of our other public health gains at risk. This is just not worth it. It's just not worth India's reputation. It is not worth our confidence in science and vaccines.
Let's leave it there. I think that's a clear message that's coming out from two people who've worked on the issue. This is not a time for being Usain Bolt when it comes to vaccines. We need to work hard at getting it right. Thank you both very much for joining me here.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.